So the United States has accused China of conducting a secret nuclear test in 2020. And this is pretty serious. We have arms control experts today worried that this could trigger a new nuclear arms race between the United States, China, and Russia. Now, for some context, this would make China the only country other than North Korea to have conducted nuclear explosive tests in the past 28 years. So let's get into what we know, some key responses, and what this could mean going forward. Now, earlier today, the U.S. Undersecretary of State for Arms Control and International Security, that is a mouthful, holy cow, Thomas DiNanno accused China during a speech at the Conference on Disarmament in Geneva of conducting secret nuclear explosive tests, including one yield-producing test on June 22, 2020, saying, quote, "Today I can reveal that the U.S. government is aware that China has conducted nuclear explosive tests, including preparing for tests with designated yields in the hundreds of tons. The PLA, China's People's Liberation Army, sought to conceal testing by obfuscating the nuclear explosions because it recognized these tests violate test ban commitments. He claimed China used decoupling techniques to hide these activities from seismic monitoring, which of course would be in violation of the ban on nuclear testing." Now, all right, hold on. That announcement hit the news at like 5 a.m. Eastern time Friday morning in the United States, which is kind of wild when you think about how explosive, no pun intended, how explosive of a claim this is. Like, it's kind of buried in the news cycle. Like, there's worse times to put out information, but 5 a.m. on a Friday is pretty rough. Now, the Chinese response that we've seen at this point was from the ambassador Xin Jian, who rejected the claims as false narratives and unfounded, maintaining that Beijing strictly adheres to the ban on nuclear testing. And interestingly, the executive secretary, Robert Floyd, of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty said that they didn't pick up on it. Quote, "Regarding reports of possible nuclear tests with yields in the hundreds of tons on 22 June 2020, we did not detect any event consistent with the characteristics of a nuclear weapons test explosion at that time. Subsequently, more detailed analysis have not altered that determination." So, translation, we didn't notice it at the time, and now that you're saying it happened on this date at this time, we're digging into the data that we have and still don't see anything that would signify that a nuclear test explosion occurred. Take that for what you will. I mean, the United States certainly has a lot of means of gathering intelligence that not everyone around the world has, and we, of course, do not share 100% of our intelligence with everyone at all times. There could be arguments as to why we didn't share this with the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty organization. But if that is the case, that means that we sat on this information for the last 6 years. June of 2020 is when we said this test occurred. Now, some added context here from the War Zone that I'll have linked in the description below. They said the last official nuclear test in Russia came in 1990, just before the fall of the Soviet Union. The United Kingdom, France, India, and Pakistan conducted yield-producing nuclear tests at various points in the 1990s. North Korea is the only country known to have conducted such tests since 2000, with the detonation of 5 devices in separate instances between 2006 and 2017. So, I mean, the timeline here is pretty crazy. I mean, even if you rogue North Korea over here firing off nuclear devices left and right, even if we go with them, you're talking about the first detonation in, 2020. That's the only nuclear test now in the past, 9 years was carried out by China in secret. That's interesting. The timing here is unique, right? Just yesterday, February 5th, 2026, was the expiration of the New START Treaty. That was the last remaining nuclear arms control treaty between the United States and Russia. We cannot separate that from this news. And we're going to come back to New START here in a second, because that's kind of one of two possibilities of what this all means right now. The first possibility is that this might be a justification, whether the test occurred or it's just an accusation. We should say that. This could be a way for the United States to justify resuming testing of our own nuclear weapons and maybe even modernizing our own nuclear arsenal. I understand that might sound a little bit crazy, and I would agree had President Trump not within just the last few months talked openly about wanting to conduct more nuclear tests. I mean, if we take him at his word, then that seems like something we might be getting into. Here's President Trump talking about that.
Are you saying that after more than 30 years, the United States is going to start detonating nuclear weapons for
I'm
testing.
saying that we're going to test nuclear weapons like other countries do, yes.
But the only country that's testing nuclear weapons is North Korea.
Well,
China and Russia are not.
No, Russia's testing
So
nuclear weapons.
my understanding
And
is
China's testing them too, you just don't know about it.
that would be certainly very newsworthy. My understanding is what Russia did recently was test essentially the delivery systems for nuclear weapons, essentially missiles, which we can do that, but not with nuclear
Russia's
warheads.
testing and China's testing, but they don't talk about it. You know, we're a open society. We're different. We talk about it. We have to talk about it because otherwise you people are going to report. They don't have reporters that are going to be writing about it. We do.
Now, this option, whether you put it at 1% probability, 90%, or somewhere in between, is what has a lot of arms control experts concerned, because this is the type of thing that could potentially trigger a nuclear arms race, right? If China tests, so we say, well, now we have to test, then maybe China needs to test a little bigger device, and Russia needs to start getting in on the testing. And it's the kind of thing that can just spiral. So no testing kind of prevented that from happening in some of these arms control treaties, but with the New START treaty being gone, and accusations today of nuclear tests taking place, there are some folks in the arms control, nuclear nonproliferation, arms control community that are concerned of the direction this could take. Now, the second possibility here is that this might be President Trump wanting to pull China into whatever the next iteration is of an arms control treaty, a nuclear treaty that would take the place of New START. So we should spend a moment real quick on what that treaty actually was. That stands for the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty. Again, it was the last remaining nuclear arms control pact between the United States and Russia, expired on February 5th, 2026. So it was a 10-year agreement that went into place in 2011, expired in 2021. It had one 5-year renewal, I guess is the best way to put it. President Biden and Putin agreed at the time to renew it for 5 years. Then as the war in Ukraine kicked off, we saw a lack of cooperation in this regards, to say the least. The United States has accused Russia of not adhering to their commitments in this treaty, no longer sharing information, which is one of the key components of enforcement. And Russia, of course, says we have adhered to everything, but either way, the treaty has arguably not been in effect for a couple years. Officially, it expired yesterday, and there was no new option there was not another option to renew it for another 1, 3, 5 years, anything like that. So essentially, as of yesterday, we needed to negotiate an entirely new agreement. I could argue that maybe we should have been doing that ahead of time, knowing that that treaty was going to expire. It's not like we couldn't have done something in the interim, but that's neither here nor there. The New START treaty, what that did was it capped the total number of nuclear warheads each side could have available for immediate use at 1,550, I believe. And important here is that this treaty was it was bilateral, so between the United States and Russia. China was not a party of that. Keep that in mind. New START also capped the number of deployed delivery systems and deployed and non-deployed launchers. And then it had a verification regime that included on-site inspections, biannual data exchanges, and rolling notifications about status and location of nuclear forces. All of that is gone right now. And one of the arguments here is that because that was going to go away, we should let it happen. And now we need to focus on having a new agreement, not just with the United States and Russia, but with the U.S., Russia, and China. So Secretary of State Marco Rubio on the State Department Substack a few hours ago. It's hard to say that sentence with a straight face. Yes, our State Department has a Substack. It's not new. Well, I mean, it came out last year at least. But hey, I'll link that in the description below. If you're ever having a hard time falling asleep, that's the move right there. Dig into some deep foreign policy analysis. I guarantee that'll do the trick. Now, Marco Rubio in that post earlier today talked about the requirement for a new treaty that reflects that the United States could face not one, but 2 nuclear peers in Russia and China. He says China's rapid and opaque expansion of its nuclear arsenal since New START entered into force has rendered past models of arms control based upon bilateral agreements between the United States and Russia obsolete. Since 2020, China has increased its nuclear weapons stockpile from the low 200s to more than 600 and is on pace to have more than 1,000 warheads by 2030. An arms control agreement that does not account for China's buildup, which Russia is supporting, will undoubtedly leave the United States and our allies less safe. So I think there's a good argument that that's probably one of the directions the U.S. is heading. And I think that's fair. Like, if we're going to negotiate something new, 100%, let's get China included in this. It is interesting at this point that there seems to be some disagreement as to whether or not China actually carried out that nuclear test. From what I've seen, there's not been any like hard and fast evidence presented by the United States other than, an official statement from somebody inside of our State Department. He didn't say that off the cuff in an interview, right? That was a prepared statement. But in terms of the evidence, I haven't seen that provided. But either way, it could be, I'm going to hope that our government is putting out factual information on something that's significant. But either way, there's definitely some framing around the direction that they're trying to take this. Whether it is, and these things aren't mutually exclusive. It could be President Trump wanting to do more nuclear testing and say, well, China did it, so we have to do it, and we're going to do it, or we're gonna lose pace with China's progress. So that's one. That's not mutually exclusive from wanting to pull China into whatever the next arms control or nuclear treaty is between the United States and Russia. But however you spin it, this is at the very least a pretty significant accusation. And assuming that China did carry out these tests, it's pretty historic. Again, the first one carried out not by North Korea in the last 28 years. We'll have to see which direction this goes. But that's all we got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.